You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 209 of Arsenal Pass. No, it is 209. I checked this, Pankaj. Pankaj just looked at me. We're in person here if you're watching the video. So last week I said it was episode 208, which is 4 years of Arsenal Pass. And then we finished recording and I told Pankaj, I got it wrong. It's actually only episode 207. Turns out I put 206 on 2 episodes in a row.
I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Because I was like, I put in the show notes, I corrected us. It's 208 this time. Because you told me false information.
I know. Set you up for failure.
That's the way it goes here.
I'm so sorry. But it is episode 209. So this is officially 4 years and 1 week of Arsenal Pass. 5 years. That's going to be the big milestone. 5 years. I made sure we got so much to talk about in the pod. We're going to try and pack it all in. But we spoke to James White a couple of times over the weekend at Pro Tour London, and one of the first things when I was talking, he said, thank you for your content and everything. I said, that's 4 years of Arsenal Pass, James, just to let you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
we'll have him on at some point. And speaking of LSS people that you were speaking to, you spoke a lot to Brian.
I did speak a lot to Brian. I was
on the cast. Yeah.
I was sat next to him for the full weekend. If you haven't checked out Pro Tour London, what are you doing? Honestly, some of the most. I feel like maybe I'm a bit biased because I was in the booth. But honestly, some of those games were insane.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, let's start with that. I do have a question here for you. How was your first time casting?
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. I mean, maybe I got super lucky with Pro Tour. I think, honestly, if you haven't, go and check out on the PCG YouTube page, Pro Tour London, because their production, it was so slick. Sam, Ethan, Nathan, the whole team, everyone did such an amazing job.
Aiden,
yeah, Alex, Aiden.
Aiden.
Oh my goodness. All those videos you saw, if you go back and watch the cast, all those videos you see in between the games, all those amazing, well-shot cinematic videos, that's all Alex and Aiden. Like, that stuff was just phenomenal.
The highlights, the sort of recaps of the game, which the turnaround time on that was just insane.
They were running.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it that quickly. But, something I've been saying for the past, ever since I started casting with Ethan, after every show, I'm just like, damn, Ethan, I don't know how you keep making it better, but surely this is the ceiling. And then next time I get on a show where he's producing, I'm like, oh, you did somehow make it better. Like, just again and again, every single time there's some improvements. Like this time, it was the cameras on the casters. When we had the caster booth, we had side shots of us, which was really, really cool.
Like on ESPN.
Yeah, and it worked really well, right? I think when I was watching back the footage, it really felt like we could bring the viewer into like our conversation. It felt a lot more personable, and that's just Ethan being like, hey, you know what? We should add this as an extra thing. Yeah. And then, of course, Sam working that into our prep of it. And I think it worked great.
Yeah. If you're an audio-only listener and not on video, me and Pankaj just sat next to each other in my hotel room
for the second time.
In London, 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
We're going to get to do, I think roughly, if I had to guess, we're going to get to do, 7 or 8, maybe a little less, 5 or 6 pods together in person per year.
Yeah.
There you go.
I guess each PT is at least one.
At least one, and then, probably 2.
Yeah, and then if you're going to stay back like in Singapore, then obviously we're going to do more. Yeah.
So we get to do that. Should we start Pro Tour recap? Because what an insane weekend. I don't know, how did you find it from being in the booth, but also just how did this compare to other Pro Tours you've done before?
I've never thought of it as a comparison. I guess a lot of what I just said, where the production quality has stepped up and somehow keeps stepping up after every Pro Tour. So that part was awesome. Other than that, the game quality, I would say has been as high as ever, right? Typically at the Pro Tour, especially top 8 matches, we just get the best quality games, and it was no different for this one than the previous ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit different because we just had our first 2-time Pro Tour winner.
Yeah.
That's just insane.
So there's amazing narrative around it, for sure. Which is really, really cool. And I think we had I'm skipping ahead a little bit to like our favorite moments, if you will. But we sort of, not quite the same level, we sort of had another Sigil of Solace moment, right? With the Phantasmaclasm drawing the popper to like pop the, to pop the Phantasmaclasm, which was really, really cool. It was awesome to like catch that, as he drew the card and then he goes in and pops it. And we're like, is it a CNC? And it is.
So Pankaj was calling that game. I actually decided for that, because it was the final, obviously, I was like, I'm going to go and sit out. So if you've never been to a Pro Tour before, one thing I think that they're doing better and better at these Pro Tours, the event organizers, they set up a viewing area for spectators at the event. And so bear in mind, this is Sunday evening, late in the day. There's maybe 1 or 2 events left running. I think there was a Sync Below event, for those promo Sync Belows still running. But there was still probably around 500 people in the hall maybe. And about 80 to 100 of them were sat watching the final, which is awesome. Honestly, they have this viewing area, multiple screens. Everyone sat in rows of chairs. And I just went and stood at the back. And I was like, this is insane. Like just getting to watch, yourself and Sam call the game, reflect on the weekend, see everyone so engrossed in what was happening with this Pro Tour, which, people, honestly, I think people were like, this Pro Tour is going to be boring. It's just the story of Aurora, which, spoiler, it was not the story of Aurora. And, I think it was just so cool to see. And then, just seeing, honestly, you heard it, right? You probably hear it through, could you hear it?
Yeah, it was
the
actually,
reaction was insane.
It was so funny because it was a bit delayed.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, because it's happening live, they do have the live viewing area a little bit delayed from the actual game that's happening. So we called that moment and he drew the CNC and he popped it. And it was a minute later, we heard all the cheers and we were like, wait, what are they cheering about? Did someone open an alpha product or something?
No.
Like, no. It was a Phantasmaclass unpopping. But we already a minute past. It was really funny. You could actually hear it in the broadcast. So if you watch back the game, you'll see the pop happen, but a minute later you'll hear the audience.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
It was so insane. I was sat there and I was sat with, I went over to see the PCG Invasion team. They were kind of sat there, friggin' awesome weekend for the boys.
2 top 8s for them.
2 top 8s. Yeah. And I was chatting to Nick and Matt. I was kind of stood behind them. They were sitting watching. And we were watching the game. And I see his hand. I see the Phantasmaclass. And I'm like, oh, man. Pablo's hand kind of sucks here. Like, it's pretty average. Imagine if he just rips the popper off the top. This game's going to be crazy. And then Pablo basically steamrolled from it. Well, not steamrolled, but Pablo just, his whole top 8 run was just punctuated by phenomenal play and some great luck.
Yeah, some of a good luck, which you do need. We say time and time again, you need skill, but you also need a bit of luck. And I want to go back to his skill because I have best game for me again. Moving on. Best game for me was the quarterfinals, Pablo versus Leo. That Enigma Prism game. Honestly, halfway through, once the library stuck for a couple of turns and Pablo had used his traverse, I believe, and I was like, oh, this game's over. I was like, Prism's got this. It's easy. And then that Rage Spectre that could. And every single blocking decision, every single call Pablo made was just absolutely correct. Which I think that game really showcased how much skill you need to win a Pro Tour. Yep. More so than the luck side of it. He just played out of his mind that game.
Well, how much skill you need to win 2 Pro Tours?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I obviously got the privilege of calling that game. That was hands down my favorite game. It was just crazy. The back and those last few turns, trying to keep up with where the game was going. And I think in the end, Leo maybe made a couple of decisions that you could look back on and say, was that the right call? With his Herald of Triumph and deciding not to keep the Angelic Wrath and go down to 2 life.
There was a moment where you could have sent Erudition, but if Pablo had the popper, then he would lose. But
that's the Pro Tour, baby.
But if Pablo didn't have the popper, you win on the spot.
He wins on the spot,
And then he went for the safer line where he didn't send Erudition. Yeah. I think that cost him the game, right?
I think
but that's a very hindsight thing.
100%.
So it's you're supposed to go blind rip Erudition into a popper?
Yep.
And you could lose there, but then if it didn't, you win this. It's I don't know.
It's so hard, right? Yeah, it's easy to say when Pablo didn't have the popper, right?
Exactly.
But actually, Pablo still had quite a number of poppers left in his deck. I think he still had half his poppers.
Yeah.
I think, I know me and Brian, I was like, I'm confident it's 3. And then I know you were sat watching the game with the headset on next to Ethan in the producer seat. And you're like, we think it's 2. And I was like, it's definitely 3. It's half his poppers are still left. It was just insane. Yeah.
It's so good.
I love that as well. If you watch any of these casts a little bit behind the curtain that I didn't know about, is that you have the producer who is Ethan Van Sant all the time, but you can also there's a seat, if you maybe one of the casters wants to jump in, or maybe one of the rest of the coverage team want to jump in, and you can actually it's you're sat next to the desk, right? Really, and it's pretty cool.
A little bit of trivia. Ethan set that up for me because he was the previous 2 times I'll go grab some random chair and always sit next to him and bother him. He was this time,
the producer chair, the co-producer chair.
Yeah, he was dude, we have a seat for you this time.
Yeah. That's so funny.
But what else am I going to do? It's top 8 games. I'm going to be watching the game, so I'm there, and then I get to every now and then if you see something the casters maybe I'm missing or not fully aware of, then at least I can tell Ethan to go.
Yes, it's actually so helpful as well. Honestly, because that game was so hard to keep track of. So we're getting a little bit inside the actor studio, honestly, but it was It was awesome. What do you want to talk about next? I mean,
Yeah, so first thing I want to do is I just have to be honest. I have to call myself out. You spoke about points of failure, setting me up for failure at the start of the pod. You were 2-0 into me on predictions for the PT. I'm just going to be honest about that. Aurora representation, you called like 30%. Like that was your higher range. I was like down in the 18 to 23. And her representation was 30%. You also called Enigma winning, and Enigma did win. So, there you go.
Well, I said the Enigma was the best deck.
I mean, I think that part is still okay. I mean, I guess, but I mean, she did win, and you called her winning. So,
I honestly,
so there you go.
I think what I had
2-0
come
predictions.
What I had come to
Yeah.
is if you watch the cast throughout the weekend, you watch Max Diekman play in those top 8 games, 2 games against
He
Aurora.
was so good.
Like that's the conclusion I'd come to. It's like I was winning more than I was losing as Enigma into Aurora, because it felt like if they didn't hit the Flicker Wisp turns, they went bust. Like that's honestly what I just came to. And honestly, we saw Pablo do the same thing, right? Pablo beat Paul von Heysel as well.
Yeah.
Same thing. And Paul didn't have access to Flicker Wisps. And it showed. Like Pablo was able to navigate that game so well. So I think I found that out maybe like 2 weeks before. And so I had shifted from, I think Aurora's the best deck and Enigma might win the PT because of positioning too. I think Enigma might just be the best deck and it's going to win the PT.
Yeah. And you made the right call. I got a bit hung up on the Slippy cope, it seems like, in like the week leading up to the PT.
It did well. It showed up, right? Like it had a win in the last round. Or second to last round, I think. I
think it was a Marinette winning in.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, goodness me. We're getting a phone call. I'll edit this out.
No, don't. Just keep it in.
No, okay, I'm getting a phone call. There was a Marionette winning in the last round. And then
the Slippy was, I think, the Slippies were out by the last round. I don't think there were any Slippies. But 3 Prisms, I guess that's something we should touch on. I was not expecting 3 Prisms in the top 8.
I think that's the story, right? Like, apart from the 2-time Pro Tour champion, the other story was Prisms. I think was there 12 Prisms that showed up on day 1?
I don't remember the number of Prisms.
I think it was like
it wasn't
8 to 12.
high.
It was like not a big representation. It was like top 10, but like 6th or 7th most played deck. And then 3 into top 8.
I do wonder...
Like, and it could have been 4. It could have been 4.
Like, not to take anything away from the Prism players, but after watching the top 8 games of Prism versus Aurora, I do wonder how much of it is... If you're against an Aurora that doesn't know how the matchup goes, then you're turbo favored. But in the top 8 where the Auroras were prepared and knew what to do, those games didn't look very Prism favored.
One exception. I think Leo's
except Leo.
Visionaire's deck with
Yes.
the red Essence of Ancestry, I think he kind of cracked it.
Yes, that Prism list was favored into Aurora.
I think he kind of cracked it.
But he played Enigma round 1 of top 8, right? He played
did,
Pablo.
he played Pablo.
Yeah.
That was the amazing quarterfinal.
Sorry, yes.
Because you called, if he beat Pablo, he was going to win the PT.
Yes, I think that list was the most teched for that top 8. I think it was the best Prism list into Enigmas and Auroras.
Yeah, it had 6 Angelic Wrath. Like, I think it was well set up, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, he was so close to beating Pablo too, right? That game was so close. It did really look extremely in favor of him, like around the middle of the game.
Yeah, I mean, you might even say, like, honestly, if Leo, I think the person who played better won that game. Like, if Leo played equally to Pablo, I think he won that game. Like, I think if he made that, was a bit bolder on his call, found the line, he would have won that game. So it was so tight. And that's not taking anything away from Leo. Like, he played so well. Every turn, I watched his match. We had him for his game against Aurora. We saw him on stream. He played so well.
Yeah, and I think he had the best deck too, like for that top 8. But then going back to like the other, like the way the Prism Aurora matchup goes, at least with the stock Prism list, like not Leo's list.
Yeah,
it did feel a little bit like we saw Sean. Yeah, we saw Sean play against Prism. Well, I don't know if it was Andrew or if it was Kevin Murphy.
It was Kevin Murphy.
Kevin Murphy. And then we saw Andrew play against a different Aurora. It wasn't...
It was Paul.
It was Paul. Yeah.
He played against Paul in the quarterfinals.
And like those games, it felt like, when the Aurora knows, like when it's that time, when this was blocking out, when this was like pivot and just put pressure on a Prism. It felt so textbook because both Auroras did the same thing against both those Prisms and just got there. That I was like wondering, like, is Prism favored into Aurora? Unless, like, is Prism actually favored into Aurora, or do you need to be on like Leo's list to actually?
I think so. That's what we found in testing as well. We had Prism on the radar early in the testing process, and then we're like, yeah, this beats Aurora, and then we adapted, and then we're like, actually, this doesn't, and it doesn't feel. It feels like you need to draw specifically. Either you need to find back-to-back turns of Angelic Wraths, or you need to find library in the first couple of turns, or you can't beat Enigma either. And I think Leo fixed the Aurora matchup to an extent.
With the Essence of Ancestry, yeah.
And the way he played it and the way he set up. The Enigma, I think he did what he needed to against Pablo to win the game, and ultimately, such a close game, didn't quite get there.
I think in deck building, he fixed that matchup too. I mean, when it came with the sacrifice, right? He completely doesn't have the aura package, which I think is an amazing call for the meta that we were expecting, actually. It's like very similar to the Uzuri thing, right? It's kind of like, I'm going to beat Aurora, I'm going to beat Enigma. And if I face like a random Guardian or a Brute where I need my aura package, fine. I'm not
Florian.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose Florian.
Yeah, Florian I think would be tough for him.
Yeah, I could see Florian being tough. I mean, you could maybe do some library stuff, but yeah. But basically, he took the hits in those other matchups, but then he focused on the top two, and I mean, he got a top 8 out of it, and I think his deck was the most equipped.
Yep. I want to talk a bit about the meta spread, because I think when you look back at this Pro Tour, if you look just at the top 8, you'll say, wow, yeah, Prism was a bit of a surprise, but Aurora and Enigma, just like we all predicted. But if you sat there and you looked at the win and ins in the last round of that Pro Tour and the decks, there was 8 different heroes in contention for win and ins in the last round of the Pro Tour, which is crazy. So you had the 3 that obviously made top 8. You also had Vincent, Marionette. We had a Nu playing for win in the last round. We had Slippy was the round before, played for a winner and then lost, and then if they won, they would have come 9th.
I see.
So they couldn't have actually. They had an on paper winning in, but it was going to put them 9th.
Got it. I thought that was a new because
there was 2 players, Shing and a Slippy player.
Okay.
That if they won, but they didn't end up winning. So
well, there wasn't a Florian, right? Florian was 3rd most represented.
Yeah, it did terribly, which I think we both called.
Yeah, right. It was like, this deck is so cool. Why are you on this? Yeah.
So yeah, I just think interestingly when you look at that top 8, but honestly, I mean, we had a Vincent, which unfortunately it lost 3 win-ins in a row.
Yeah. Oh, that was Gustavo, right?
Gustavo from Spain. Yeah. That's honestly soul crushing. It sucks. But yeah, awesome to see Vincent there. The Marionette had a win in the last round, which we covered on stream. Which is
Zens were absent.
Yeah, again, Zen sucks. Told you this.
All right, yeah. I can't say anything. I went 0-2 in the predictions, so yeah.
Yeah, I think there actually was a Zen in the second to last round before top 8 who was still in contention until the second to last round. So
I see.
There was a spread of heroes, which is
for sure
is cool to see. But you know what? I think we knew that Aurora and Enigma were the 2 best decks in the format. And they certainly showed that. And I what did I say last week when we recorded the pod? I said, you have to have a really, really good reason to not play Aurora or Enigma. And people thought they did. And I think they didn't. And some people actually did in the forms of Prism, Slippy. I think that's about it.
Yeah, Prism. Those are pretty much it.
Yeah.
There is I mean, I still think Kano was a fine pick, and the Kanos actually did well. You are better into you're better into the Aurora. Yeah, the Kanos did well in CC. You're better into the Auroras, but literally everything else people were bringing, you were destroying. Like, you were good into Enigma, and any random Earth hero you face, you destroy them. Like everything else outside of the 30% that was Aurora, you were very, very happy into.
Yep. I also want to point out that on the pod last week we had some interviews with players, which was awesome. It was really nice, and I just say a big thank you to those players who gave up their time to have a chat with us, or those casters in the form of Brian and Sam as well. It was good to have them give their predictions. I'm glad that Brian came around to correctly predicting that Enigma was going to win instead of Zen. I'm glad that he made that move. And I want to shout out to Arthur Hay, who called Pablo to win when we interviewed him.
Straight up knew it. He's part of that testing group. The Armory testing group, right? He was there with them. He's like, hey, I guess Pablo's going to win. Actually, speaking of that, should we talk a little bit about the team's predictions? We had whole conversations around the teams and the expected performance going to a weekend. And Armory was obviously the team everyone had their eyes on. I think they ended up doing, obviously they won the Pro Tour in a sense. Like, Pablo won the Pro Tour. And Shing isn't part of Armory.
No, but
there were...
So Aaron Shantz had he was the Slippy that was live until second to last round.
And then Sam Sutherland was 7-1 going to day 2.
With Zen.
Yeah, with Zen.
Yeah. I think he won 2 the draft, on day 2, and then lost his first round of CC and was basically done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the rest of them perhaps didn't do so well, is it?
Yeah. They had some like they had a lot of 6-2s.
There were six
They had
X2s
a
and
few
X3s
players who
and-
didn't make day. I don't think Yuki made day 2, right?
I don't remember.
There's a couple of players that didn't make day 2, but I think Simon didn't make day 2. But yeah, I mean, they obviously won, and they put a few players into top 32 as well.
Yeah, and it is 11 players after all. It's not like a massive team. It's 11 players, and
Yeah, and we spoke about the runaways. Charles was 8-0 after day 1.
Yeah,
And then went 0-3 in his pod.
which was wild because he had a good Fang deck. It was light on defense reactions.
It was a fine Fang deck.
Yeah, it was light on defense reactions was like the main thing, and then it was a bit punishing.
Yeah,
at
I
least
thought
for
it
the
was
matchups.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the rest of the runaways, I think they had the worst of the teams that were featured at the Pro Tour. They had the significantly worst team performance, unfortunately for them.
Yeah.
Most of their players did not day 2. It happens, right? You make a call on the deck, or you decide to lock in, and it doesn't. I mean, they actually played a spread of heroes, to be honest. They played a little bit of spread. I think most on Aurora, but a reasonable spread of heroes. They had a Kano in there, things like that.
So did the Armory, actually. Armory also. That's 6
they had a
different
massive
heroes
spread.
across like 11 players, which is really, really cool. Brody on Azalea, and then Hamilton.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. Hamilton and Aaron Chance and Slippy. I was not expecting Michael Hamilton to play Slippy. I was like, that's so not your style of deck.
Exactly.
But it was a cool pick. Yeah. Any other teams? Blue Pitch. I mean, Shing narrowly missing top 8.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Ninth place.
Yeah, Alan he made day 2. It was Alan, Pudding, and Shing that were in day 2.
Yeah, the reliable trio.
Yeah, and then
The team struggled a little bit.
Yeah, they were in contention up until the last few rounds. Then I think Shing was one where we were watching as winning in. It was a semi.
Shing was never actually. Unfortunately, Shing was never in contention for top 8
by the last round. Yeah,
because he was X and 3.
Yeah,
so he was only ever live for 9th place, which you don't really know because it could be a draw.
Exactly,
you don't know until you get down to the home stretch. But so me and Brian, while you guys were casting round
must have been
14 because we did round
14,
15.
Yeah.
Me and Brian had like the paper out, and we're like working out, and we're like, Shing finishes 9th. Like he wins and he finishes 9th. Unfortunately,
yeah, I think you all told us. Yeah. So we stopped calling our winning in at some point. Once you gave us the information, it was like I was a bit bummed to hear that, especially since I watched. Yeah, like he went ahead and won that round, and then like damn, he still didn't quite make it.
Give you the shout out for a team though, Team PCG Invasion. Shout out to those boys.
Oh yeah, 2 of them in top 8. That's fantastic performance for them.
And I think what's really cool is that for the first time, having worked with this group and its iterations over the past few PTs, this time what the group did is they all really worked with a bit more of a strategy. And effectively all landed on the same 80 cards.
And the same draft strategy too. You said same strategy, and I was just thinking of Michael Yasko telling me that they drafted like for a couple of hours, and they're just like, we're just going to force Syndra, I cannot be moved.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is Michael Yasko makes top 8. He sits down, he has Jacob Barr on his right, who's part of Team PCG Pass as well, PCG Invasion, sorry, in the second draft, so day 2. And Michael takes 4 Syndra cards in a row. And Jacob obviously hard cuts him. And it turns out there's also another Syndra to the right. And Michael gets past 5th pick. It was like a cut deep.
Probably a cut deep. Yeah.
It was something really strong for Fang. And he pivots into Fang and he 3-0s that pot with a really strong Fang deck. So yes, he was there to quote unquote force Syndra. But if the lane wasn't open after he cut it, after he tried to force it, he was open to change it. And that is good draft fundamentals. Like, I think if you're someone who says, I'm going to force a hero, and then you just blindly force it no matter what happens in your pod, you're going to set yourself up for some amount of failure. If you're a good enough player to say, I have a preference for a hero and I want to try and cut that lane off immediately, if it doesn't work out, yes, I will pivot. That's good drafting.
Yeah, and then in the end he did 3-0 that pod on Fang. In the end he could be moved, were his own terms. But he was sad about it. He's telling me about it afterwards. He's like, damn, he was like, in the end I could be moved. As he 3-0s the pod.
Yeah, turns out can be moved.
Yeah. But yeah, to your point, like they had the same strategy, draft and CC, and it worked really well for them.
Same 80 cards, and shout out to like the team. I think in particular, players like Matthew Dilks, who are calling LA champion, is just a great deck builder and crafter of game plans. He worked a lot on that. Tarek, these players like put a lot of time and effort into this Aurora deck, and obviously Michael and Sean.
Yeah.
You want to talk news?
Let's move on to the news. So we've got PQ season kicking off this weekend. And Zen and Enigma both at the 980, 990 mark. They're basically gone after this weekend. So that's what our main topic is going to be about, talking about the implications of them leaving. Aside from that, we have some new high seas cards that were previewed at the keynote. Not the dev talk, but there was fantastic information at the dev talk. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely go. That's also on the official Fab TCG YouTube channel. The keynote, we got some new high seas cards. Do you have any thoughts, Hayden?
Yeah, I'm actually just going to bring them all up now. I think what was most interesting to me is James White just immediately comes on stage and goes, yeah, that symbol there, that's tap. And you untap at the end of turn.
Yep, it's magic, but except you untap at the end of turn instead of the beginning.
Yeah, which makes sense because you draw up at the end of turn. So it follows the same turn cycle. It's a new resource that follows the same turn cycle, which actually makes so much sense.
Yeah, and we did sort of see that coming too once we saw the cards and actually thought about it.
Yes.
I know we both kind of wanted it to not be like magic.
But it could only work that way, really.
Yeah. They need other cards to be like untap your stuff and it could just get clunky all over the place. I'm getting really hype on Marlin.
I told you, man. Marlin, man.
Yeah. The hook. So they spoiled the legendary pirate hook, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't remember the exact
gold-baited hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is action tap. Your next pirate attack this turn gets when this hits a hero, steal a gold token they control, otherwise create a gold token. At the beginning of your end phase, if you haven't created a stolen gold, or created or stolen a gold this turn, destroy this. Go again. So effectively, okay, let's say you're not playing against another pirate, you're just playing against, I don't know, Cinder or Aurora or whatever. Tap this, I attack. If I hit, I'm going to get gold. If I don't, this is getting destroyed. Or if I find another way to create a gold, obviously.
And you're Marlin, so you have access to overpower. Clearly that's what her cards are set up to do. Even the cannon, we finally have the cannon.
Yeah.
Which shows overpower.
Very flavorful.
The card that really made me think, oh my god, Marlin's going to be really strong with this is Conqueror of the High Seas.
This card's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is. I will. It's pirate action attack. Was it the first time we saw it?
Yeah, we saw this at the keynote for the first time.
It costs 4. It's majestic at red. Attacks for 7. Defends for 3. Pirate action attack. When this hits a hero, destroy all cards in their arsenal. Create a gold token for each card destroyed this way. It's the Command and Conquer aspect of it, and it has high tide, which is a keyword. If there are 2 or more blue cards in your pitch zone, this gets +1 and go again. And the theme of these heroes is cost 4, gold cost 2. Pitch your 2 blues, effectively crack your gold, cycle a card. So you have a card left over for Arsenal or something, or if maybe you draw a pummel or resources for a pummel. And then, you're going to often be activating high tide or filling the effect of high tide and coming in for 8.
Well, you know what else costs 2? And the reason why I'm so excited for this in Marlin in particular.
Yeah.
You pitch 2 blues for this, send this for 4, as of 8, go again, destroys the arsenal.
Yeah.
And then you codex and you CNC them.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's destroy Arsenal and then you put it back and
or you
blow
just
it up again.
Or you just strap CNC.
Well, then the Arsenal's already gone from the Conqueror, right?
Oh yeah, true. You need to codex. Well,
exactly. You codex to bring it back.
Come with weakest link afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Or some of the 2.
So many things you can do.
Or you pummel this. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Marlin particularly because of the codex interaction.
Come with Teleshar afterwards.
Oh.
Teleshar Marlin, let's go.
You're breaking the game already. So that seems really good, Marlin. And I think the hook as well, because of Marlin's evasiveness, I could see that being very, very strong. Do you want to go ahead and talk about Puffin for a little bit, your new mechanologist hero?
Yeah, I'm not super excited about Puffin, I'll be honest. But I could get more excited about Puffin. But in the keynote, Puffin, well, not even Puffin, something attached to Puffin got a roaring round of applause. And it wasn't Puffin. It wasn't, Conqueror of the High Seas. It wasn't the key art. It wasn't even Viscerai and Prism, although they did get a bit of a round of applause. It wasn't even these crazy cards that James White is slipping into packs. If you haven't seen this, these one-off signed cards
from his personal collection,
which is insane. It was Polycranker, which is Polycranker is the legendary Puffin companion offhand ally, has 1 health, and it says action, tap this, banish this, return this to the arena under its owner's control, unequipped, tapped, and with a steam counter on it. And this has Crank itself, so you've got kind of this inbuilt action mechanic, and it also has Perched, which is a new keyword, which I assume we're only going to see on Polycrank at this set. And it says this can be equipped in addition to a 2-handed weapon. This can't be attacked while it's equipped. So you have this in the game, it's equipped, can't be attacked, and at some point you're like, all right, I'm going to tap this, banish it, return it unequipped and tapped with a steam counter on it, I'm going to crank it to get that action point, So free action point at some point, and then
well, it's not free action point. It just refunds the action point, right? If you crank it, because the action that
it doesn't have
flickers
go again.
it doesn't have.
You're
go
right. It's just giving you an action,
but it gives you a crank for Puffin's hero ability.
Yeah, which gives you crank.
So it's a free onboard crank, minimum once a game, but your opponent has to deal with your poly cranker after you unperch it. Yeah, because it'll untap. So if your opponent doesn't deal with it, then you have just more onboard cranks, a free onboard crank from this bird.
It's important to know when it untaps, it doesn't re-equip though.
Yeah, it doesn't re-equip. So it can be attacked.
They can still kill it a turn later, for instance.
Yeah, so the turn Puffin unequips this, the opponent should try and kill this. But depending on how Puffin ends up sequencing the turns, if you can sort of do it where you poly crank at the end of your turn after they've already blocked out, then you sort of get a free another like onboard crank in the form of this bird. So I could see it being really, really strong. Couple of things to point out. It has 1 health. It cannot be attacked while it's perched, but wizards can still zap it.
True.
Like,
once it falls off its perch, fair game.
What?
Once it falls off the perch, fair game. Once it's unperched.
Oh, as in for other heroes, for non-wizards. Yeah. But wizards can just go ahead and zap it while
they
it's
got
perched.
reached, man. They got reached.
Exactly. Which is kind of cool flavor-wise. You're kind of like, hey, I'm going to zap your bird off your shoulder real quick. Whereas the others can't quite reach it for some reason. I'm not sure why a ranger can't just like shoot an arrow through it, but whatever. Okay, I want to take a moment because this really stuck out to me. I was like, what in the world is that type line? That type line for poly cranker. Oh, actually, the other thing I want to point out is because now the bird has a name, we can't joke that Puffin is the bird.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit bummed about that. Like we say Victor is the horse, but you can't say Puffin's a bird because the bird is poly cranker. But what is that type line? Puffin companion.
Yeah.
Right? Offhand ally. Puffin, this is the first time we've seen
do you know what it is?
Actual hero in the type line.
I think, and James spoke about this in the Div talk when someone asked him about sacred art and why sacred arts weren't specializations. He said there just isn't room on the text box for it. And I think this is the same thing. Polycranker just doesn't have room on the text box to put
Puffin specialization.
So it becomes a Puffin companion offline ally. I think that's exactly what's happened.
I think so too, but it's just such a funny type line because every other type line is like pirate McLodge. It's very like sort of like even the specializations will still say, talent class or just the class. My Visceral Specs will just say Runeblade something, but this says just Puffin companion.
Puffin companion.
And an offhand ally also just cracks me up. It's so funny.
I think I can just talking about actually no, maybe I can't. Never mind.
Okay, cool. And then we have a couple more spoilers. One thing I want to talk about, Gold Kiss Rum.
Yeah.
Which is a generic item. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah, generic token item. Instant tap your hero, destroy this. Your next action this turn gets go again. Your hero can't untap this turn unless they're a pirate. So, you drink the rum, you're a pirate, all good. You can handle your rum. You're not a pirate, you can't handle that rum. You're not going to untap the flavor in the set.
It's kind of funny. But yeah, we haven't seen any cards that generate this yet, but I think that's going to be very, very interesting. I think giving other classes access to action points like this, like potentially, could be really, really, it could be quite impactful. Of course, it depends on how easy it is to create.
Yeah, Brian on the cast was at pains to point out that this says generic token item, right? Like
exactly.
He specifically pointed that out. That was a bit of an Easter egg for me. We don't get insider information. He literally said that on the stream, and I was sat next to him, and I was like, "What?" Yeah. Also, a little bit of a spoiler. But I don't know if you noticed this, but Marlin is actually the art in the Gold Kiss Rum logo, which is really cool.
That's really funny. So that'll be cool. And then the other card I want to point out. So we're not going through every single new card, but I want to talk about Flying High, which is
we saw it as a promo, right?
Which is sort of like a Captain's Call. It's like a different take on Captain's Call.
Yeah, Flying High has a cycle. I'm looking at the red one. It says your next attack this turn gets go again. If it's red, it gets +1 attack, and it has go again itself. It's a rare, defense for 2, cost 0, and then at yellow, it says the same thing, except if it's yellow, it gets +1. I think this card's really good. I mean, defense 2, and it doesn't have the modality of something like what's the other one?
Captain's Call.
Captain's Call. Yeah, right. It's called Captain's Call. I was like, a quick Captain's Call. It's not in the set. Do you reckon Captain's Call's getting reprinted?
Ooh, I could see it. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's very flavorful.
Yeah. Surely, right? That's a freaking easy win for them.
Yeah.
Fyendal's Fighting Spirit doesn't need to be reprinted for the 4th time.
Maybe Shelter can be reprinted, but I don't think it is.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think this card's cool.
Like, I'm curious about this one for CC implications as well.
Yeah.
Potentially. Because Captain's Call to me has been on the cusp of playability for many heroes.
I played Captain's Call.
Yeah, like in Chain, right?
Yeah, Chain, and just Chain?
I think it was just Chain.
I feel like I played in Viscerai, but maybe not.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I think I played in Viscerai as well.
No, it was Lead the Charge in Viscerai. Right?
I think at some point I've played it. I think in Belittle and Belittle Viscerai.
Yeah.
The deck that I built and people hated.
Yep. I want to say, but I remember when I was theory crafting the Mystic Heroes, I was really looking at Blue Captain's Call as like a starter to like do the whole Transcend thing. It didn't quite work out, but like when you see like flying high, like blue is flying high and red flying, it's very much in that space. And I wonder if it can unlock some other strategies in the other heroes because of that reason.
Well, this one might be better. The problem with Captain's Call in like the Mystic Heroes is that you often want to get the value of the +2, but you really need to go again to then be able to utilize the chi all the time. So you need to choose go again. And it's like, well, at that point, I should probably just play. If I'm just choosing go again every single time, I should just play it. And it blocks 2. I should just play a go again card. But to your point, if this gets both,
exactly
value. But the problem is that you don't want to play a blue flying high on then a blue attack, because then you could have just played the blue attack. Do you know what I mean?
But how would that blue attack gotten go again?
We'll just play a blue go again attack.
Oh yeah, but then you're playing blue go again attacks. But then now you can play Droplet.
Yeah, true. Okay. But that also blocks 2.
I know.
What you could play, what you can play is you could play. I mean, bye Enigma. But there is some. I mean, Illusionist has obviously good blues, but
the tenets of chi. That I remember. Yeah. That's what I was theory crafting back when we still didn't have the full MSC
first or
set.
Second.
I don't remember, but there's the one that it draws a card.
Yeah, that card's
if you
good.
play the blue this turn. Stuff like that. There might be something that obviously
Wind. I think that one is. Maybe.
I think Wind is a go.
No, Wind's go again. Yeah.
Then there's a +2 one. There's a draw a card one.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So like that whole thing. I mean, obviously it could just. I was theory crafting that before we saw the full set, so it might just be a limited sort of thing. But I think just generic go again is. There's potential for brewing to happen in other places. You could also imagine, I mean, LL Briar might actually really like flying high, right? Yeah. Anyway, so do you want to move on from high C stuff? Or
yeah. I mean, just hit these quickly. We've got World Championship announcement in the keynote speech as well. Philadelphia for the World Championships this year, November. We've got double calling. Welcome to Rate Alpha Draft in Auckland on August 8th to 10th. It's unlimited sealed on day 1, then day 2's draft alpha, which is insane.
Yep, that's really new for you.
Yeah, I will be going. James White said this is the last time they will be rolling out alpha at any event. So they've always done these alpha drafts at like PTs and stuff. They're no longer doing this until they've got something planned for 10 years, which is another 4.5 years away. Yeah. Best bit of 4 years away.
Yeah.
5 years almost. And then we saw Armory decks for Ira. And then we've also got, so Max is coming out next weekend. This coming weekend. Ira's coming very soon. We've got Guardian set Mastery in August as well. And then we've also got these Legends Armory decks, which is Prism and Viscerai.
That was very interesting. I was not expecting Living Legend.
I think it tells you something though.
That they're going to put more of a focus on it?
I think definitely. I think that's exactly what it tells you.
Well, I hope Starvo gets banned then. Or something.
I think Chain's the egregious one right now.
Oh, true. Yeah, you're right. Chain is the egregious one.
Yeah, I think that would do some balancing.
Yeah.
So,
I think Vomit does need it, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I say that because I can't play Icelander there. Anyway.
Yeah, you might need a lot of change before you can play Icelander, unfortunately.
You need a lot of balancing before that can happen, probably.
I think we're going to skip the Commander Cookout this week.
Okay.
In the essence of time.
Sure.
But if you do want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please get them in. ArsenalPassFab@gmail.com. YouTube comments, as we've had a few questions recently, drop them in here and let us know it's a Commander Cookout question. Maybe you've got a question about the weekend, about Pro Tour London, you want to know a little bit more, or maybe it's for ProQuest season as we approach. It's going to look very different weeks 2, 3, and 4 to what we're going to see this weekend. There's even a chance that we see Aurora. Actually, no, because if it won, then we could have seen it LL, but I think it probably would take all 4 weeks now for it to LL, if it even LLs.
Potentially. I mean, we saw Enigma win, so now that's why Enigma is on the about the LL.
But if Aurora wins, for instance, the next calling, and it'll be gone, including this ProQuest season, I think.
I could see that. Yep.
So yeah, get your questions in.
Yeah, we actually did get one in person. Someone handed us.
Did. Yep. I have a question from in person.
Yeah, you took a photo of it, right?
I think we got 2 questions.
Okay.
You got given one, and I also got given one.
Yep.
So and we have 2 questions.
And we have photos of them, right?
I do have photos of them. I also have them over on my side table there.
Okay, great.
Nice and safe. Let's get into the main topic. Let's talk the revolution of Classic Constructed, because we're about to see 2 very impactful heroes leave this format. We're about to see this weekend with ProQuest Week 1 for Pro Tour Singapore. Enigma is going to go after winning Pro Tour and winning calling. It has all of a sudden gone from the hero with the 5th most Living Legend points to the hero with the 2nd most Living Legend points, and is going to Living Legend this weekend along with Zen. It's crazy. We've been talking about Zen impending Living Legend, and it feels like, although they're in the same set, it felt like Enigma was definitely going to be after you. It was like Zen's going to go, and Enigma's like, it's just crazy that within the space of time, Enigma's just going to be gone. It just has happened. The 150 points adds so much, and they're going to walk out hand in hand together, and definitely change the format. I think what's interesting is that when this heroes released, you would have said, yeah, when Zen allows it, will change the format again. This time, Zen will not change the format, but in fact, Enigma will significantly.
It feels like there was almost like a soft LL when the books got banned, right? I mean, Zen changed significantly since release. And now the Zen deck today is not a Zen deck that got 500 of his
very different.
Yeah, so half of his Living Legend points were very different than the second half of his Living Legend points. It's almost like Vishrai-esque, where when Skeletor was around, he got a bunch of Living Legend points, and then just didn't at all, and then got like the second chunk of it after Rosetta came out.
Well, also, Enigma's won two Worlds and a Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Do you know what Zen's won?
Wait, did you say 2 worlds?
No, a World and a Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Do you know what Zen's won?
Oh my god, nothing.
No Tier 4 events.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Has it only won 1 calling?
There has to be more than 1 calling. There's no way just one.
I'm not going to go and sense check it right now, but I have a feeling it's like...
Oh, we won nationals, like US nationals.
But that's not a calling.
Yes, I mean, Tier 3 is a high.
Yeah.
It hasn't won a single Tier 4.
Evan Hinton won on... And it won quite a few nationals, but I think the ProQuest season, the national season where the bulk of its points came, it didn't win the Pro Tour. It might have won the calling the weekend of Pro Tour Amsterdam, actually.
Yeah, it did. I think Charles Dunn, right?
Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think it's won like 2 callings, which is crazy to think. And Enigma went ahead and won like 2 or 3 callings, a Pro Tour and a Worlds.
Yeah, Enigma got a whole bunch of the Tier 4 events.
Insane.
Yeah, I do want to touch a little bit on the whole LLing thing. Just revisiting a conversation we had a few weeks ago a little bit, which is when it was on the cusp of the Pro Tour, like I spoke my piece about it where I was like, I don't really like that it's a couple of weeks before the Pro Tour and a hero is potentially about to LL. Like, not that it was specifically
You got some great
Zen.
responses to that as well.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. Not specifically Zen. Like, to me, like the fact that it was Zen was a bit of a close shave, because if it's something like Enigma or Aurora and pro players don't know whether Enigma is legal for the Pro Tour, to me that's not an ideal situation. But I do want to contrast it with right now, and I think this is awesome. Like the fact that we can go first week of ProQuest and Enigma and Zen might LL, and then we get a shakeup in the middle of ProQuest season, and we aren't stuck with heroes who are already past the LL threshold, and you need to stick with them throughout the entire season. I think this was the intended use of the system, the weekly check-in, and I really like that we're about to come into a ProQuest season with that in place, and I think that should be commended. Like, for how critical I was a couple of weeks ago when I was on the cusp of Pro Tour, I do want to commend the system for what's going to happen right now and its intended function.
And no matter what side of the fence you sit on, whether, hey, pro players should be able to deal with this, or it's really not ideal and we should have a freeze like we spoke about 2 weeks before, no Living Legend changes should be able to happen for a major, that we think is a pretty reasonable suggestion. We spoke to a few of our friends on the weekend, I will say, and one of them had a particularly strong opinion that they thought it worked just fine, for instance.
Did we hear that?
Yeah, I'm not going to name names though.
Sure.
I can tell you after the pod.
Well, I remember hearing the opposite. And I think it's also the difference between like people who are actually practicing and the pro players versus like spectators, right? I think we touched on this, where as a spectator, and even on the coverage side, I was like, oh, it's kind of exciting. But imagine if you're the one actually needing to prepare for this and you don't know whether Enigma is legal or not, like a week before. Well, that's just like,
this is the perspective of someone pretty close to it, I think. But
okay.
Let's start with Enigma.
Yep.
What does it mean for Enigma to LL? What is it going to mean for Flesh and Blood?
Well, every illusionist that's LL'd, how do you say it? How do I verbalize gatekeeping? How do I verbalize the lack of a gatekeeping? Every illusionist has gatekept in some way, so every time they leave, like a big shakeup happens. Enigma's obviously no different. So
so is every Guardian. Every Guardian's gatekept as well.
Yeah.
Starvo and Ultim.
Yeah, true. Starvo feels like his own category.
I'm just saying,
yes,
the illusionist hate is real over here. I'm just trying to balance out the equation.
But yeah, as it should be. But this is the third illusionist that's LLing, and it's gonna maybe bring about a whole bunch of churn in the meta, but I mean, Aurora is still around, and Aurora is also, I think, still has quite a bit of a grasp.
I think that's
the
the
meta.
thing.
So
I think I was thinking about this the other day, like how big is this Enigma impact? I was like, that's really big, but actually, Aurora's the best deck, like hands down now. And how you're gonna make sure you can beat Aurora?
yeah, exactly. Which is so funny because coming into a weekend, we're like, okay, all these decks are being pulled in different directions because they need to beat Aurora and they need to beat Enigma. And now you're like, okay, Enigma's gone. Now you just have to beat Aurora. And it's still a question mark. Like, okay, like, yeah, I know you like Jarl.
Well, yeah, I think that we'll get to that. We'll get to
yeah.
the heroes that we think might come into play or not come into play. I think we'll talk about best in format, playable, possibly playable, and stay away from, I think, for week 2 of ProQuest season. So we can talk to that. I guess anything else you want to say, just macro level about Enigma leaving?
Yeah, I think people are allowed to block a little bit more now.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a big thing. The big thing about the Enigma, the sort of pressure she's putting on the format is you needed to be able to block Aurora, but you needed to be able to side out all your blocking cards against Enigma.
You had to be able to do both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have to side into Enigma with Sync Pillows in your deck, like in your 60, right? I knew some new lists like had to do that for a little bit, and that's just embarrassing. Like, I think if you play a Sync Pillow against Enigma, you should be embarrassed.
I think you could do it in certain decks if you went. So if you didn't expect them to play auras into you, and you expect them to go on the like Phantasmaclasm, like Weakest Link kind of train, you could get away with some number of Sync Pillows. So the Mirror, for instance.
I suppose. I just still feel like sometimes you're gonna have that moment where they traverse Mirror Guy you and you're holding a Sync Pillow.
So then you can never play more than 2 or 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But ideally you want like none, like I think.
Potentially, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But now you can actually block again. Like you can have configurations of 60 where you have D-Reacts in, unless you want to respect Kano a whole bunch, I guess. That's the only matchup. Because even in Divergence, you're fine bringing D-Reacts in.
And Prism, you definitely want them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think on the macro level, that's my biggest thing, where people will be able to block again. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're just going to hopefully move away from mid-range because I think decks have almost been squeezed in the middle by Enigma and Aurora. They've been pushing from two. It's weird. They're not. They. You might think they're 2 completely different axes, but then they're not. They're 2 almost of the same axes where they're going to push their agenda and game plan. But one of them says, so Aurora says, I'm going to come at you with pure damage and some really relevant on hits. And you have a decision to make about what you want to do about that damage. And most people have decided I need to block that damage because I can't race it. And spike turns of CLV and burn up shock are just too powerful to not try and defend. And on the flip side, Enigma moved to saying, yeah, I'm going to proactively push a game plan into you with overvalued cards and a really significant in-game setup. So you need to be able to put pressure on me on my off turns and also combat my best turns. So, because if you can get through a Phantasmaclasm or 2, a Traverse turn for the Miragai setup, you're going to be in a really good position against Enigma. But if you don't have a deck that's capable of doing that on any given hand, only on specific hands, you're going to be in trouble.
Exactly.
So I think we just get away from decks trying to do both those things, like you say, and now you can almost explore some of these more niche in the middle things, I think, and potentially push. There's a spot for a deck to open up a game plan that isn't be the best aggro deck in the format, but it's still a proactive game plan. And I think that's really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. We'll get more into specifics later on. Should we move on to Zen macro level?
Yep. And then should we move straight through into Aurora best deck in the format?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, we did cover a lot about Zen.
We did. The 2 weeks ago, yeah.
Exactly. So, and I think we already spoke our piece where it's kind of like, when we were looking at, if ELLs, what changes? Like, not much, because not many people were teching sideboard slots for Zen. Zen wasn't gatekeeping anyone. He's just a strong, solid deck, but he wasn't gatekeeping. People weren't like not... I think the one exception was Vincent. Vincent, and we did get comments on this, people like, Vincent was being gatekept by Zen.
But people weren't really playing that much Zen. That's the thing. It wasn't gatekeeping so much. It just was a bad matchup. Yeah,
exactly. But aside from that, I just feel like kind of everyone else still just gets to move on with their lives. Yeah. Like, it's like they kind of Zen LL'd. Okay, cool. I wasn't doing anything different for that matchup.
Yeah,
anyway.
It was just it was the ultimate 45-55 deck. Like, it was. I think one thing I will say is what it does change is I think it opens up people to spend some time on other ninjas to explore. Because people were spending time on Syndra, and it's like, yeah, Syndra's not as good in aggro deck as Aurora. Play Aurora, and if I'm going to play blues in my deck, I should play Zen, right? And then Katsu, you look at the cards and you go, I should just play Zen immediately. So maybe Katsu's got some cards. Maybe there's some. I honestly, actually, you know what? The more I think about it, maybe it's worth exploring Katsu. Like, can you play what the frick's it called? Flick Flag.
Oh,
Knick-knack.
Yeah.
Flick Flags, and like maybe you can actually play a really good mid-range or like kind of defensive Katsu right now.
So to me, at that point, I'd be like, I think you should play Ira if that's a line you want to go down.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe Ira's good. Yeah.
While we're talking about other ninjas, I think
really like
Fi.
combo. I think really like combo.
That's fair. I think Fi is worth exploring if we're talking about other ninjas.
Yeah.
I think Mascot Pouncing Lynx is.
You've been talking to Lucas Oswald too much.
Oh, is he a Fi?
I think that's
fan?
what he said. I think he said it to Margin, but I was like, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Fi is worth exploring if you're going down the route of other ninjas.
Yep.
But coming back to Zen's macro impact, I mean, it's kind of just like, it's like a shrug.
We've said it. We spoke about it. I think we can move on. My question, is Aurora the best deck in the format?
For now, yes. But I mean, this
Not
is
guaranteed, right?
Yeah, this is a great part about like the meta shakeups, right? It's like, how much can you actually predict? Something that comes to mind for me is kind of going way back in history, but PT1, when they did the bannings, when they did the Skeletor ban and everything, it was a triangle format before the ban happened. It was Viserai, Prism, and Starvo. And Viserai was kind of like, was good into Prism and like could play into Starvo and stuff. And what they said in the ban and restriction announcement was, okay, we're banning Skeletor. No. They were hitting Starvo. Yeah, they were hitting Starvo with like Autumn's Touch and everything. And they're like, okay, since we're hitting Starvo, we didn't want to just hand over the keys to Viserai.
So we're banning Skeletor.
So we're banning something there. And I was like,
And made it unplayable. Yep.
But my response when I was reading that, I was like, but you haven't put Chain in this, because Chain was like really, really strong, and he has implications like if you put Starvo down, that Chain is one that comes up because Chain beat Viserai and beat Prism. You know, kind of thing. Where it's like there's this, you can't just look at the current top decks. So what I'm trying to get at with that whole long-winded spiel was you can't just look at the current top decks and be like, okay, now if one of them leaves, the other one is just the one that stays at the top.
Yeah.
Because there's other stuff that was being held down by the other top deck that can now come up and contest.
Which is great. And that's the thing we're going to see next. And just also to be clear, LSS fully knew that was going to happen with Chain, and that was their intent. They wanted to see the back of Chain as quickly as possible.
You think so?
Oh yeah, because they wanted to print other cards.
I see.
And they couldn't because of Chain.
I remember reading the BNR being like, wait, no, if you hit Starvo, Chain comes up, and Chain beats Viserai and Prism. Like, you're not handing the keys over to Viserai, you're handing them over to Chain.
But what they wanted to happen was like have like Lexi, for instance, be more playable potentially. So and obviously it ended up happening. It became almost a duo format of Chain and Starvo with a bit of Kano, a little bit of Briar, a little bit of Prism.
Prism still, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So Aurora best deck Aurora's the remaining best deck in format.
It's the de facto incumbent.
Yeah.
Right? Until we see what else happens, and we're going to talk about some decks.
Exactly. So like we now have, Aurora's a deck to beat. But I think we could very easily by third or fourth week of PQ have a different best deck, or at least have a different deck that is on the same level of Aurora, where you need to be thinking about this deck as another deck to beat.
There's no ban and suspended announcement until after ProQuest season, which I think in hindsight, I wonder if LSS feels like they wanted to have had one maybe today, or like yesterday, this week. I wonder if they would have had something from Aurora. Honestly,
I could see it.
I think they would have, because of the fact that Enigma and thing. But I think now they're just going to let it LLL.
Yeah, and
I think Enigma going actually helps that for them, in the fact that I think we're going to have some decks that can actually compete for this ProQuest season.
Yeah,
I think I would put money out. If someone said, "I'll give you, let's say 3-1, even 2-1 odds right now that Aurora finishes with the most LL points, most wins from the ProQuest season," I'd put money down.
Sorry, I'm very bad with 2-1. I'm not sure what
double
exactly I was like. Yeah,
double my money.
So on what?
On Aurora being the deck that wins the most ProQuest this season.
Yeah, wait, isn't that the default? Isn't shouldn't that be the under in that?
Yeah, I would snap take it. Like I wouldn't even think about it. Like, I'm so confident that I think Aurora will that I would put quite a significant amount on it.
I could see that. But I could also see a world where something rises up and then there is another deck to beat that's not just Aurora.
Yeah, I can see a world where Aurora wins the most amount of ProQuest this season, but it's not by a whole heap. And it's quite close between first and second, or even first, second, third, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. I guess, should we just move on?
Let's get into it,
Get into the specific heroes.
I think the one we've got to start with is because it top-aided 3 copies in Pro Tour top-aided is Prism. Does this get better or worse? And what's his position now?
Yeah, I think, okay, so we did see 2 different Prism lists, and I'm just going to reiterate again what we spoke about at the top of the show, where the Prism Aurora matchup, I think on the stock Prism list, the one that still has an Aura sideboard, I don't think it's that positive into Aurora, and like the top 8 games showed it. Yep. So then I'm kind of like, so I think the question comes down to, does Prism need to keep the Aura package around? If she doesn't, say the way the rest of the meta evolves, and she doesn't need an Aura package, I could be like, okay, you can play like Leo's deck and be favored into Aurora. But if you still need your Aura package around, then I'm not entirely sure where she lands, right?
So maybe let's come back to it, because we'll talk about some other decks we think might come up, and then we can say, well, where does Prism sit? Because I think if it's just Aurora, I think it probably stays about the same, which is interesting. But I think the decks that potentially Enigma are holding back might hurt.
Exactly.
So we'll talk about that.
And I think the first place I look to is actually the Earth Heroes.
Okay, want to go Earth Heroes first?
Yeah, sure. Florian and Verdance are like the first place I'll look at when it's like Enigma, at least particularly Florian.
Okay, let's start with Florian then. So I think Florian, Enigma leaving, it's good for Florian.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like, very good. I think the Aurora matchup, like people, that was a big reason people decided to play Florian, is they thought it was favored. I think we landed on basically saying that it's slightly unfavored for Florian.
I landed on coin flip. I was like, I think it's like 50-50. Yeah.
Yeah. So that seems good for Florian, Enigma leaving. If we think about maybe Prism as being a really popular pick, I think that's tough for Prism. I think they do need the Aura package.
Exactly.
And I'm still not even convinced that that's a good matchup for them. So
Summer's Fall does a lot of work.
It does so much work when they have to Aura into you. So I think we'll just continue to talk about these decks. We'll kind of add layers in and we'll speak about them as we go down the list, right?
Yeah. So to me, Florian gets a big bump, like a big increase. And to me, he takes the spot of like the guardian of the format. Like Florian is basically like really plays like a guardian in many, many ways. And now he doesn't need to have a whole bunch of random tech for Enigma. Like they were just adding all sorts of go against like Rune Rager Swarms and everything just to try and have a chance in the matchup. They get all those sideboard slots back. So until something else comes up that they need to deal with, it does feel like Florian
do they need
gets
for Prism though?
I don't think they need go again into Prism.
I'm not sure. Yeah, like I think if Prism goes hard into the Aura package, is Summer's Fall enough?
I think you would rather go down the 7 popper. I guess Prism isn't super heralding you. She still is a little bit.
She still needs to connect to get Figments, but
exactly.
That's the tough thing. Yeah.
Like go again doesn't really help into the Aura package because you can still never clear 2 auras in one turn.
No, it's about putting pressure on them so that they can't like set up big ALS turns that absolutely destroy you. That's what you need to worry about, because they can Halo to guarantee go and get their first Angel, and if they can then set up with like Merciful, like they can actually loop you. If you give them time, they can loop you.
I'm not sure whether you need more than like just the E-Strikes and Gloom Veils is the kind of thing.
Yeah,
like if Enigma you need the Rune Rages and everything, it's like and then you have the Summer's Fault. Like I think
Florian, and you got Channel Heroic, and you've got Millennium Tree, which honestly, Millennium Tree is also really good against like freaking wood and stuff as well.
Exactly. So, and Runic Reclamation, 7 power popper, you destroy auras.
Autumn Star's red.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we think Florian gets a good bump. And they can probably spend more time teching into the Aurora matchup potentially. Maybe there's something else that people are exploring, but they didn't have enough cards to do it. Had to hedge their bets. Florian seems like gets a jump. Florian getting a jump probably hurts Prism overall. So probably, honestly, it's around net the same, if not net negative, with those 3 decks in particular. Let's talk about Verdance, because it's the other Earth hero.
Yeah, so I think Verdance... It's so interesting. I think the perspective of the Enigma matchup actually evolved over the PT weekend, at least amongst the Verdance players, where Enigma suddenly felt quite comfortable.
It's classic Wizard cope, though.
I mean, okay, so Margin went 3-1 into Enigmas at the PT.
Yeah,
on his
and we saw him in top... Oh. No Verdance in the top 8.
All right, fine. Anyway, but I think the bigger thing I want to talk about is that if Florian is rising, that is good for Verdance.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good matchup for Verdance.
Exactly. 100%. And Enigma leaving is also good for, like, whether you take it as, right? So it's also good for Verdance.
But Aurora is not good. And if Aurora is still the best deck in the format and maybe gets more popular, that's not good for Verdance. Also, my other question is, Prism can't be good for Verdance. Yeah,
Prism's not good for Verdance. But I think Verdance is, I think, a little similar to, I think, again, a hero I think we need to come back to, because I think it's, again,
relative
reliable on what happens elsewhere. So if Florian comes up, or like if like random... like CYB Jarls or something come up, and then now you can be like, okay, cool, I'll just play this unbeatable combo deck, basically, that is resilient.
Let's go, because I think there's another hero that I think is going to be more popular than Verdance, and that's Nu.
Yes.
It's the remaining Mystic Hero. It's powerful. I think, honestly, it's probably one of the first places I'm going to start is like, because it is so powerful. Like, raw power is there. So let's go. Enigma leaving. That's definitely very good for Nu, especially in the iterations of Enigma that we've seen recently. I think it's very good for Nu. It also means that you open up yourself to what builds you can play of Nu, I think. Pankaj is getting his dagger, his Hunter's Claves back out. He's getting really excited.
No, you see, the thing is, I think it's worse for Mark Nu.
Okay, sure. Well, then we'll just go back to normal Nu or some other iteration of Nu.
Here's the thing. I think CYB Nu is where people
that's gonna be
go back to. That's the thing, because
okay.
So remember, Aurora still exists, so you still need your blocking cards.
Yeah.
Like you still want to be like blocking. And then I just think like Nu just goes fatigue now, because when you think about other stuff that might come up, you're like the other sort of
That's not good
grindier.
to Florian.
It's better than regular Nu.
Is it?
Yeah. Regular Nu is straight up unfavorable to Florian, but if you like up your chi count and start threatening like fatigue on that front, that's more likely to succeed than your regular Nu stuff.
Okay. Interesting.
And anything else that wants to suddenly want to play more mid-rangey and grindy, you're like, okay, cool, I'm just going to play Nu, I'm going to heal up, and then like banish your deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm quite bothered. I'm quite annoyed that I do think theory-wise, I think CYB Nu is the place to be for Nu. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I'm not sure. I need to explore it, but I think Nu is going to definitely. I mean, it's never really. It's always been somewhat popular. Like, it's not completely dropped away. It's always still been one of the more popular decks in the format. I mean, go back to this last Road to National season. It was the second deck in terms of wins or win share.
It was quite high up.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? So I think it's one of its worst matchups is gone. Like, or at least a deck that it had to really configure itself towards to have a reasonable matchup into, and it was a popular deck as well. So that spread. But what we do know is that Assassins can kind of struggle into a spread format. They thrive when they have a more specific format to target. So maybe honestly it stays a little bit neutral, because Prism's not a good matchup for you. Florian, you say, is not a good matchup for you. So all in all, it might just stay around the same for Nu.
Yeah, and for CYB Nu, Aurora's not a good matchup either. Yeah, you won the Jacob Clemens list, which is the 12D react.
Yeah.
Which was what Michael Hamilton played at Sao Paulo as well.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
I want to quickly talk. I can't be remiss if I didn't talk about Yao, because I think Yao has been waiting for its lunchtime matchup to go, which is Enigma. And I do think Yao has one of the best matchups into Aurora. So I think it has to be, if you're looking for a deck, if Aurora is the best deck in format and you're looking for the deck to beat Aurora, that's your number one goal. It's hard to go past at least starting with Yao and exploring. The problem is that if Florian rises in popularity, that's tough. I think
Verdance as well?
Yeah, Verdance. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Verdance is going to rise enough in popularity, honestly.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I think Florian's going to have an impact.
Florian's a hard matchup.
Prism, though, I think is actually good for you.
Interesting.
I think that's fine. I think because what you can do, you have to decide. If you think Prism is the deck to rise and Nu, you're not worried about Nu, you can actually build your deck to...
Right. You have to pick one or the other.
You can build in the poppers. You can start to play this build. You can put all the 8 power attacks in. But if Nu's going to be around...
You can't play Macho Grande.
You can't do that. So you have to decide what you want to do. Because I think you can configure either way to be able to beat Aurora, because the key cards is you just cut your more Earth package and you keep the Ice package. So you just have to decide what you want to do, I think. Or if you think that Nu's going to be more important, you keep the Earth package and you don't have these 8 powers and things like that, blue.
And then you lose to Prism.
Yeah, probably. I can't imagine you don't.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I think it's worth testing.
For sure, yeah.
I think it's worth testing. Maybe there's ways, maybe you can jam time skippers in so you can't ever get looped.
And double hammer.
Yeah, maybe you just have enough to kill them, because you do have a lot of damage, honestly. And you can fit in probably still 20-something poppers. So maybe it's enough. I'm not sure. That's the thing. And do you see Prism start to play things like Celestial Reprimand, for instance? We just don't know. So I think Yao, definitely gets a bump, but is it good enough? I'm not so sure, unfortunately. As much as it pains me to say. So
that was our list of, okay, these are where we would start, or where we think people would start.
I think these are contention heroes, yeah.
Okay, so now we're moving into the maybe category. It was a little bit more dubious, a little bit more dubious. And I kind of want to start, we have this list, but I want to start at the bottom of it. I want to start with the Brutes.
Oh God, yes, we could.
You tell me, what do you think of the Brutes? Because if I think about, I don't know, slower, dirtly decks trying to come up, I actually think Brutes thrive in that sort of meta?
Yeah, they can. I think I have some fundamental problems with Brute.
Is that Aurora still exists?
Well, no. It's just the way that they operate. I think you're better because these talented heroes that exist. You're better off playing the talented heroes like Florian, for instance. If you're worried about people dirtling around, I would just be playing things like Florian, which have these like crazy big punch through turns.
Well, okay. I mean, I still see. I mean, like if KO starts bringing back cast bones again, I feel like these other heroes struggle into that, right? Which is my point.
Potentially. I think that the challenge is like there is a deck that does that kind of thing better, and it's called Aurora. It's a good, strong it's a deck that has a good combo. Just play Aurora, and that's the challenge. I think like I don't think you can play KO or Aurora is legal.
Well, I guess to just push back a little bit, like why I put Brutes on the list was if people are gonna look at like to the Jarls and like the Florians. And like if those decks start teching against Aurora and are fine to Aurora, I could see the tech they bring into Aurora struggle into a deck like KO. Like you tell me, Jarl versus KO, in theory, to me sounds like that would be quite KO favored, but I obviously haven't played that matchup at all. Neither hero has been super relevant, but you tell me.
You can actually, like, the problem is like KO can actually fatigue. KO is fatiguing his Dromai. Like I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd have to test it and see. Like in theory, it's probably better, but I don't know if it's I still don't know if it's favored.
Okay.
I think Rhinar is in its current iteration of cards printed unplayable.
So okay, I did write Brutes, but honestly, I just meant KO and like a little bit of Leviathan.
You just meant
potentially.
KO.
Yeah.
So I think it's a comeback too. The other thing I have is that like just Aurora. Like fundamentally, a Brute is never good when there's a good ninja in the format. It is its ultimate kryptonite because it just lines up in the perfect way into Brute.
I agree, but when we're looking at these other heroes like the Florians and the Jarls and the Prisms, I'm kind of just like, if like the level 2 deck that we're talking about kind of thing, right? There is this whole mass of heroes where I feel like Brute is going to be quite comfortable into, like in theory at least.
For sure.
Right?
I think the level,
Prism, you're
level 1 deck
Brute.
is just too good though. Like I think that exists when the gap between level 1 and level 2 is like really close, where these level 2 decks just have power. But a lot of these level 2 decks are just responding to a power as opposed to having their own raw power. So targeting them is like if there's a really clear default level 2 deck, then you basically start to draw the first line of a triangle at that point. And then you add the next line of the triangle. So you can insert Brute as a potential dot in a triangle. I think when you can't do that, I'm not sure it's playable.
Yeah, I guess. So I guess it depends how far up the Jarls and the Florians and the Prisms come up, right? Because if they become a point in the triangle, then Brute is the other side. Where it's like they lose to Aurora, but then they beat this part of the triangle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to just go bottom to top then?
Sure, let's do it.
You've got Kano / Acilio on here.
Yeah.
I like Acilio actually. I think it's while there's a bit of lightning hero to play that can also combo. I'm suspect on playing that.
I think Acilio was actually a fine pick for this past weekend. Actually, funnily enough,
I'm not getting into that. That's going to take us way too much time. We've only got another 5 minutes or so.
Okay, well, I mean, I think you were fine playing Acilio into Aurora and Enigma.
Sure.
But I think the problem is, if Prisms and Earth Heroes rise, then you're kind of just like...
I can't see this good for Acilio.
No, actually, I think the Earth Heroes are fine for Acilio from what I've heard. The Prism is obviously... That's terrible.
I just don't think Acilio is just base rate good enough yet.
Yeah.
It's like missing 1 or 2 cards. I don't think it's far away. Don't get me wrong. I think Acilio, like, it's one of these things where we're like, oh, it's not a bad deck. I'm like, yeah, it's not a bad deck, but it's also not a great deck.
Yeah.
And I don't want to play a deck that isn't great.
Yeah, we should actually move past them. They should probably just be in
We spoke about Fire briefly.
I mean...
Potentially interesting.
Yeah, to me, Fire is if people start to go super block heavy to try and beat Aurora.
Fire is always a great place to be.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. I want to talk about Dorian Fang, particularly Dorinthia, because I think there was a lot of chat about Dawnblade Dorinthia into the Aurora meta, but the fact that you can just never beat Enigma was like, put it on a shelf. Like, put it on ice. It's not good enough. I just want to check and do a little temperature check on, is Dawnblade Dorinthia potentially somewhere back on the menu?
I feel like it's gotten... Funnily enough, I think it might have gotten worse for her. But again, this is sort of like we're thinking how the meta is going to react.
Yep.
And I just keep coming back to, I think people want to lean more into the blocking type stuff. Which like 12D reacts is so rough for Dawnblade Dorinthia.
It is, yeah.
You know, like... Yeah, so 12D reacts is so incredibly difficult for Dawnblade.
And double weapon warriors are not good into Aurora.
Exactly.
So
unless... I mean, there was a list Josh Lau made a couple of years ago. No, not a couple of years ago, when Heavy Hitters came out. Which I think... If I want to play Aurora, that might be where I start. It was a Switchblade list that had Dawnblade on the side, and then it ran 2 swords, like Centauri Saber Hot Streak. So it could switch between these two. You don't seem convinced at all.
My eyes have glazed over listening to this.
But the idea is that there's a lot of sword cards, right?
Sure.
Like
So you keep the
So there's enough overlap. There's enough overlap across those two, and especially with cards like Unsheathed that have come out. I think the level of cards that have overlap have just increased.
Okay.
So that'll be like where I'll start, where you bring the dual wieldy stuff into like the defense reaction decks, and you bring the Dawnblade into Aurora. That's kind of where I'd want to start with Warrior, but I think that goes to show how unconvinced I am about Warrior, that's where I'm going to start. Because I don't think Dawnblade gets good with everyone packing all these defense reactions, and dual wielding just, you can't play that into like the most represented aggro deck. So it's kind of just like...
I still think defense reactions are a little bit of a trap with how strong Exude Confidence is in this format.
Sure,
like, honestly,
but they're still going to be on 9, like minimum,
I know. I don't disagree.
And if we're talking about like Earth heroes coming up, is like, dude.
Yeah. Marionette. I think we saw it winning at the PT. I think Enigma was not a bad matchup for you, but it was another matchup that you had to have a plan for and potentially some sideboard cards. And I think with that going, it's more interesting to me. I'm not convinced that it has a good matchup to Aurora, but I don't think it's terrible. Actually, I think it's kind of bad from my experience, but
I think you can play the game. What we found with Marionette Aurora was that when Marionette has like a good, powerful, strong turn, it matches Aurora in terms of power level. But it's the middling turns.
Yeah, it's not consistent.
It's the in-between turns where then you just fall behind from the Aurora because like your turns are like very garbage. Like you have to swing dagger, mark a Black Widow or something, and Aurora's doing 4/4/4. Yeah. It's like, you just fall behind way too much on those turns.
But where Marionette is interesting is maybe some of these decks that are rising, like the Earth Heroes. I think Marionette is genuinely interesting into those heroes.
Really? Like, go on.
Florian, I think that matchup is interesting. I think that's that you have angles for Marionette to be good into that matchup.
I suppose.
And if not, then Marionette's further off the table than it was before.
Exactly. I feel like he falls in a similar position as like the Dawnblade Dory, where, especially against Earth Heroes, where they have prevention effects too.
Okay.
Prevention effects and D-reacts, and it kind of just like you can't reliably...
They have more space for that now as well.
It's like tough. Like Florence, I don't know, they start putting Haunting Renditions back in, and Seeds of Tomorrow or something. Like 1 or 2 Seeds of Tomorrow in case like Slippy's around or whatever. And it's just like, if they go more down the blocking route to combat Aurora, I was like, that just makes things so bad for like these Marionettes and like the Dorinthias.
Daggers are just awkward, honestly. Like that's the unfortunate thing is that if people are prepared for daggers, the resources you need to make daggers work, it's just such an investment. And if your opponent just blanks that, it like just you're screwed. Yeah. It's really awkward.
All right, moving on. This one, you tell me. Dash, where are we at?
Yeah, well, I actually think I was interested in Dash again a little bit in the last format, but the problem is that you just get fatigued by Enigma if you try to just play a very aggressive, and this is either Dash, honestly, IE or IO. You just get fatigued by Enigma. You couldn't pack enough stuff. I actually think there's now interesting. I think you could potentially play a very defensive controlling Inventory Extraordinary deck, or you could play a very aggressive Hanabi Blaster IO deck in this format. I think that the interesting thing, so I think that's going to put you in really good stead against Prism and Aurora, that very aggressive deck. Florian?
You will insta get fatigued by Florian.
Yeah, that's really tough. So, but if I look at the other option, which is playing like a Chambers kind of item build, you don't have the explosiveness of High Octane anymore to beat particular decks. So I don't think you were ever good. You had no chance of ever being Enigma, basically, if you tried to play this plan. But if you can find your lane into Aurora, maybe it is some sort of switch plan where you can literally just kill them with a straight 60 card deck and maybe even play Hanabi Blaster and then turn into this chamber build to be able to beat the Earth Hero. Well, I don't know if you can beat Verdance ever, but to beat Florian. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, like the old, I mean, that was what Dash used to do, right?
Yeah. It's back to the
pistol
old
package.
Days of, but the problem is you are neutered without High Octane. But interestingly enough, don't forget Dash is like 6 ProQuest wins off being LL. So it's not going to take much for it to push over and find something to hit LL. I
think the switchboard Dash list is probably the one that sounds the most promising. I have a question for you on that, because I was theorizing about CYB and like whether that comes back into the meta. And to me, it feels like if you're going to play CYB, you should just be on new. Like, I don't see a reason why you'd play CYB in any other place other than new. Do you feel the same, or do you think there's maybe an argument for CYB Dash?
I think the other two that people will look at is Dash and Yarl for sure, because there's got to be ways you can utilize that resource efficiently, right?
Yeah. I don't see it in Yarl. I'm just like, I feel like it should just be on new.
I hated it in Yarl.
I feel like it should just be on new if it's Yarl. But Dash, I could see a reason. Yeah. Potentially, maybe. I want you to tell me if there's a reason.
I'm not sure you can beat Aurora with that plan. Honestly, then you end up having too many no blocks, and it's too awkward to set up your plan.
That makes sense.
But we'll see. Do you want to talk about Victor? I just think it
feels strictly worse Yarl unless anyone feels. Do you feel otherwise?
Maybe if Prism is the deck that rises and there's no new anywhere, then I think so. If it became an Aurora Prism format, I'm actually interested in Victor to some degree.
Yes,
but if it also includes Florian and Nu, then I have zero interest in Victor.
Exactly, it's like the Florian and the Nu just like makes Victor just oh gosh, like
I think it's just too many decks that are going to cause too many issues for you.
And then the decks that you are good in, you're turbo good into Prism, but like you're good into Aurora, but you're not like that good to warrant auto losing to Florians and Nus, right?
Yeah. Vincent. Vincent.
I was so high on this hero before the PT, like about it, and then some really good players brought this hero and just weren't able to convert. Yeah. I actually particularly remember it was day one. I was watching Mara Faris into Nick Butcher's Florian, and then I watched her execute the combo, and it was awesome. It was like a double cull, like double or triple. It was like a bunch of damage. Yeah. It brought Nick all the way down to like sub 10, and she still had rune chance remaining to go into the following turn, and an arsenal setup, and then draws 4 non-rune gate cards, and I was like, oh god. And then I just walked away. And I was like, it's like all that work. And I think that was a story of the weekend for a couple of the Vincent players where we spoke about this, right? Sometimes the deck decides you don't get to win.
It's the fundamental problem I have with Shadow Heroes, the current Shadow Heroes in Levia and Vincent, which is like they just aren't consistent. And when you take them to the Pro Tour stage, and players have played some games. This is the same thing we found in testing. Once you play more games into it, you understand. It's like the craziest thing. You sit and you play against Vincent and you go, holy shit, this deck is so scary. And then you sit on the other side playing Vincent and you're like, holy shit, this is scary if my opponent knows how to play against this hand.
Yeah. And also sometimes it's just like, oh, my deck just like, oh, that deck is so scary. And then suddenly they fall over and die. And
wait, why am I not dead?
And like, how did they die?
It's like this big like hulking beast running to you, and you're like, and then they just fall over and die right in front of you.
They just like trip over themselves, and you're like, okay. And you just leave feeling very confused.
You cannot convince me that Vincent or Levia are
it's just so strange because we were like, oh, it's maybe Aurora Prism format, and we're just back in in theory, Vincent's fine into Aurora and Prism, and then in practice, and like even into like the Florence and stuff, you have a game plan you can execute. I don't know, it's just too inconsistent, but I think it's definitely worth putting it in like this maybe category, like to watch category. Agree. But maybe the inconsistency just isn't good enough to put it in the...
It's got power. It's got power, and I think that means that it's viable to some degree.
Right. Should we move on into the traps?
Yeah, let's just quickly hit these. Let's revisit quickly. I put Ira in here. I thought it was going to be like, it still doesn't do enough, and you're continuing against Aurora and Florian. I don't think either of those are good matchups for you. And also Prism. I actually don't think that matchup's terrible for you. I have played that matchup, but I think it's not favored for you. And so at that point, I'm like, well, wait, why am I playing Ira?
Yeah.
So I think it's probably a trap. I think it's probably not worth playing.
To me, Ira has firmly been in the 45 category. Yeah, it's just... Ever since she came out, I just play against it. I was like, I see the appeal, but it always feels like you're just slightly underpowered compared to everything else. Like everything I play against, you're like 45. I'm like, why are you on this hero? And like, what do you favor against?
It's the Zen problem, except that Zen was a better hero, and now Zen goes away and Ira just slots into that slot, except it's worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, instead of being slightly favored into a bunch of stuff, you're just slightly negative in a bunch of stuff. Like, why are you here?
The only other trap I want to touch on lastly is just Slippy. I think this was a really interesting call for the Pro Tour. Spoke to Pro Tour World's top 8 competitor Aaron Shantz, who was really in contention down to the last rounds playing. I reckon he slips through the cracks. And he said, I think, the list we came to was super clean. I think really good into Aurora and Enigma. He's like, but you know what? I wouldn't play this hero outside of a Pro Tour event where the field is narrow and you can predict it, because you have so many bad matchups outside of that. And you have to tech for even some matchups that are in theory okay, but if you don't have the right setup for it, they will be a bad matchup for you.
The Earth Heroes. I mean,
very much the Earth Heroes.
Man, I mean, the moment the Earth Heroes, like, I had like one Caesar tomorrow. You're just cooked. Just like out of there.
So I think as much as it's really exciting that it slipped through the cracks, had a bit of a breakout weekend this past weekend, came really close to a top 8, really ran the tables on day one with those that chose to play it. I think, from what I've heard and from what my feeling is I would avoid this hero for weeks 2, 3, and 4 of ProQuest unless anything major changes.
I mean, you spoke about assassins thriving in a bit more of a narrower meta, depending on the assassin, and I think this was a very clear case of it. The narrative totally fit. The meta was very narrow, as Aurora and Enigma, and then Slippy was the assassin to combat the two of them the best.
Yep.
But yeah, I think should be moving away from Slippy, especially as people are allowed to start blocking again. Like, I'm not entirely sure.
Cool. All right. Well, that is going to do it for episode 209 of Arsenal Pass, where we sort of took a look back at Pro Tour London. What an amazing weekend. Congratulations again to Pablo Pintor. And yeah, just honestly phenomenal weekend. And as well, very interesting as we head towards ProQuest Season 2. You playing ProQuest in week 2? ProQuest in week 2, sorry, not Season 2.
I think I'm playing one. I land back in Seattle on Friday. I'm going to try and make one on Saturday.
Nice. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm traveling back over the weekend, so I missed this first weekend. I don't get to play Enigma ever again. But my last ever game with Enigma was beating this guy. So is what it is, team.
Yeah.
We unfortunately didn't get to time to record any games, but we can just regale you with the fact that we finally got to play a game of Flesh and Blood, and we will play many more because Pankaj wants revenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely we'll be out there for week 2. And at the moment, I don't know what I'm going to play, but whatever I play, I'm going to throw it up on the Arsenal Pass Patreon. I'm going to throw up my guide and whatever I end up playing, so that if anyone wants to come along on the journey with me, they can. At the moment, honestly, if I had to say pick a hero right now, so boring. I'll probably play Aurora.
Oh, Aurora. I thought you were going to say Jarl.
I might take the punt on playing Jarl. I think I don't have any interest in playing Prism, unfortunately. Nothing's honestly cool. I might take a punt on playing Dash.
No, yeah, could see that.
We'll see. I need to spend some time this week like brewing up some stuff and see what I can do. I would love to come up with something really cool to play, but my first task is like it's got to be able to beat Aurora. So
I've been at a bit of a loss as well. I mean, I'm probably just defaulting to Verdance for a little bit, in a sense. It's funny to say defaulting to it, given I've been doing on her.
Yeah.
Also, it's been a cycle. But I think, weirdly enough, I feel like the other hero I kind of want to look at is Phi.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like Phi just seems cool, and I think the Ignite, the upgrades he got from Hunted are actually pretty good. And then actually, since we spoke about it just now, it just came back to me that Switchblade list, the Dorinthia Switchblade list, which you seem to be absolutely unconvinced about.
No, interesting.
But that'll be something I want to explore as well.
Cool. All right, well, until next episode, live here from London for the very last time. Hayden, Pankaj, Bhojwani. We'll see you next week.